David Shaw's eyes snapped open as his cryostasis pod hissed and cracked. The first thing he noticed was the cold. The second was that he was completely naked. His genitals, fully exposed, felt the chill of the recycled air aboard the SS Horizon. "What the hell?" he muttered, struggling to sit up as his muscles protested after 50 years of disuse. The year was 2145, and humanity had finally reached the stars. Denobula Prime, their new home, waited just beyond the hull of their interstellar colony ship. As lead xenobiologist, David was first to wake. He blinked, trying to clear his vision and make sense of his surroundings. The cryo chamber was a forest of pods, each containing a sleeping colonist. Soft blue lights pulsed along the floor, guiding him towards the exit. He stumbled forward, his bare feet slapping against the metal deck. That's when he heard it, the hiss of the airlock cycling open. His heart raced. First contact was about to happen, and he was stark naked. The doors slid apart with a pneumatic whoosh, revealing a delegation of aliens. They were humanoid, with hairless blue skin and elaborate facial ridges. Their eyes widened as they took in David's form. One alien, taller than the rest, stepped forward. "Greetings, humans of Earth. I am Solaris, lead scientist of—" The alien's words cut off abruptly as their gaze traveled downward. Their jaw dropped, compound eyes dilating in shock. "What is that thing between your legs?" Solaris exclaimed, pointing at David's exposed genitals. Chaos erupted among the Denobulan delegation. Some recoiled in terror, scrambling backwards towards the airlock. Others leaned in, scientific curiosity overriding their initial shock. David's face burned with embarrassment as he cupped his hands over his groin. I can explain," he stammered, trying to salvage the situation. "There must have been a malfunction in the cryostasis system. It dissolved our clothing." Before Solaris could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. Red emergency lights bathed the chamber in an eerie glow. The ship's AI, misinterpreting the Denobulan's reaction as hostile, initiated security protocols. Heavy blast doors slammed down, sealing David and Solaris in the cryo chamber. The rest of the Denobulan delegation was cut off, their panicked shouts muffled by the thick metal. "No, wait!" David yelled. But it was too late. He was trapped, naked, with an alien who thought his penis was a threat to interstellar peace. As the alarms continued to wail, other cryopods began to open. The rest of the human crew was waking up, oblivious to the diplomatic crisis unfolding around them. Outside the sealed chamber, Captain William Steele emerged from his pod. He found himself face to face with a group of terrified aliens, all gesturing wildly at the locked door separating them from their leader and Earth's lead scientist. Back on Earth, news of the incident spread like wildfire. Government officials scrambled to contain the potential fallout. Humanity's first extrasolar colony, their foothold in the galaxy, now balanced on a knife's edge. Everything hinged on David Shaw, a naked man in a locked room with an alien, tasked with explaining human anatomy and salvaging first contact. As he stood there, shivering and exposed, David realized the fate of human expansion into the cosmos rested squarely on his shoulders and what lay between his legs. As David stood there, shivering and exposed, the weight of humanity's future pressing down on him, the situation took an unexpected turn. The blast doors suddenly hissed open, revealing Captain William Steele, fully dressed in an emergency uniform, standing alongside the Denobulan delegation. "At ease, Dr. Shaw," Steele said, his voice calm but authoritative. "Let's get you covered up." David's relief was palpable as he gratefully accepted a thermal blanket from a crew member, wrapping it around his waist. The makeshift garment wasn't much, but it restored a modicum of dignity to the flustered xenobiologist. Captain Steele turned to address the Denobulans, his universal translator working overtime. "Esteemed delegates, I apologize for the misunderstanding. There's been a malfunction in our cryostasis systems, resulting in unexpected exposure." Solaris, the lead Denobulan scientist, stepped forward. Her initial shock had given way to scientific curiosity, her compound eyes now gleaming with interest rather than fear. "Captain, if I may, this presents a unique opportunity for biological study." Steele nodded, recognizing the potential to salvage the situation. Dr. Shaw, would you be willing to participate in a mutual examination? For the sake of interspecies understanding, of course. David swallowed hard but nodded. Of course, Captain. Anything for the mission. As the other colonists began to stir in their pods, Dr. Emily Rogers, the ship's chief medical officer, emerged. She quickly assessed the situation and sprang into action. Captain, I suggest we set up a temporary medical bay in the cargo hold. We can conduct non-invasive examinations of both species there. Excellent idea, Doctor, Steele replied. He turned to the Denobulan delegation. Would this arrangement be acceptable to you? After a brief huddle and discussion in their native tongue, the Denobulans agreed. The cargo hold was quickly transformed into a makeshift laboratory with David and Solaris at its center. As David lay on an examination table, Solaris hovered over him, her facial ridges pulsating with a soft bioluminescent glow. She ran a scanner over his body, pausing occasionally to make notes on a holographic display. Fascinating, she murmured. Your internal structure is both similar and wildly different from ours. And these external appendages, she gestured towards David's now covered groin area. They serve a reproductive function, yes? David nodded, his face flushing. Yes, they do. I apologize again for the unexpected reveal earlier. Solaris waved off his apology. No need. It's provided valuable data. Our species reproduces quite differently. We utilize a complex system of spores and... She trailed off, noticing David's wide-eyed expression. Perhaps we should save that explanation for another time. As they continued their examination, David found himself increasingly intrigued by Solaris. Her blue skin seemed to shimmer under the cargo hold's lights, and her compound eyes reflected a depth of intelligence that fascinated him. Meanwhile, Captain Steele observed the proceedings from a distance, Security Officer John Martinez at his side. Keep an eye on them, Martinez, Steele murmured. This connection they're forming could be valuable, but we need to ensure it doesn't compromise our mission. Martinez nodded, his hand resting casually on his holstered weapon. Understood, sir. I'll keep watch discreetly. Outside the ship, Denobula Prime was in upheaval. News of the humans' arrival had spread like wildfire across the planet's interconnected information networks. In the capital city, crowds gathered in the central plaza, their voices a cacophony of excitement and fear. They must be gods, one Denobulan shouted, his facial ridges flaring with religious fervor. Or demons, another countered, fear evident in her trembling voice. The planet's government struggled to maintain order, issuing statements urging calm and patience. But the arrival of an alien species had shaken Denobulan society to its core. Back on the SS Horizon, the first day of first contact was drawing to a close. As the ship's systems initiated the night cycle, David found himself unable to sleep. He tossed and turned in his bunk, his mind racing with the day's events and the memory of Solaris's touch during their examination. In her own quarters, Solaris experienced a similar restlessness. She sat at a desk reviewing the data from their mutual examinations, but her thoughts kept drifting to the strange, pink-skinned alien who had quite literally exposed himself to her people. As the ship's corridors fell silent, both David and Solaris found themselves drawn back to the makeshift laboratory in the cargo hold. They arrived simultaneously, each surprised to see the other. Couldn't sleep? David asked, a small smile playing on his lips. Solaris's facial ridges pulsed with a soft blue glow. Sleep is elusive tonight. There's still so much to learn about your species. David nodded, moving closer to the examination table. I feel the same way. Maybe we could continue our cultural exchange? As they began to discuss their respective worlds, neither noticed the shadow that moved in the corner of the cargo hold. Security Officer Martinez settled into his hidden observation post, ready for a long night of surveillance. Outside, Denobula Prime's 3 moons cast an ethereal glow over the planet's surface. In orbit, the SS Horizon hung silent, a testament to humanity's achievement and a harbinger of changes to come. Inside its hull, 2 beings from different worlds began to bridge the gap between their species, one conversation at a time. As the first rays of Denobula Prime's twin suns pierced the horizon, David Shaw stirred from his restless slumber. The events of the previous night replayed in his mind. The intimate conversation with Solaris, the shared curiosity, and the lingering presence of Security Officer Martinez in the shadows. He dressed quickly, eager to continue their cultural exchange in the makeshift laboratory. The corridors of the SS Horizon hummed with activity as the crew prepared for their first full day on the alien world. David nodded to his fellow colonists, their expressions a mix of excitement and apprehension. When he reached the lab, however, he found it empty. A holographic message flickered to life as he entered. Solaris's image appeared, her facial ridges pulsating with a soft, apologetic glow. "David, I regret I cannot meet you as planned. The Denobulan High Council has called an emergency meeting regarding your arrival. I must attend immediately." David's brow furrowed as the message faded. The implications of such a meeting could be far-reaching. He quickly made his way to the bridge, where he found Captain Steele already in deep discussion with his senior staff. "Captain," David interrupted, slightly out of breath, "Solaris has been called to an emergency council meeting about us. I believe we should have representation there." Steele's eyes narrowed as he considered the information. "Agreed. We can't afford to let decisions about our future here be made without our input." He turned to his communications officer. "Contact the Denobulan authorities. Inform them a human delegation will be joining their meeting." Within the hour, a small team assembled in the shuttle bay. David stood alongside Captain Steele, Security Officer John Martinez, and Dr. Emily Rogers. As they boarded the sleek Denobulan shuttle, David's heart raced with a mixture of anticipation and unease. The shuttle's transparent dome offered a breathtaking view as they descended through Denobula Prime's atmosphere. The sky shifted from the inky black of space to a rich, deep purple. Twin moons hung low on the horizon, their cratered surfaces clearly visible. "My God," Dr. Rogers whispered, her face pressed against the viewport. "It's beautiful." The capital city of Gentar rose before them, a sprawling metropolis of crystal spires that seemed to defy gravity. Floating transportation pods zipped between buildings, their occupants barely visible specks. As they touched down on a landing platform, David's eyes were drawn to a massive structure at the city's center. It appeared to be carved from a single, enormous gemstone, its facets refracting the alien sunlight in dazzling patterns. "The High Council chambers," their Denobulan pilot explained, noticing their awe. "The heart of our government." Security Officer Martinez tensed as they exited the shuttle, his hand hovering near his holstered weapon. A group of Denobulan officials greeted them, their facial ridges shifting in complex patterns that David suspected conveyed meaning beyond their translated words. The interior of the council chambers was even more impressive than its exterior. The walls seemed to pulse with an inner light, and the acoustics amplified even the softest whisper to reach the farthest corners of the vast amphitheater. In the center of the chamber, Solaris stood before a semicircle of elaborately robed Denobulans. Her voice, usually calm and measured, carried an edge of frustration as she argued with a stern-faced male. "I cannot simply quarantine an entire species based on unfounded fears, Dr. Vexilor," Solaris was saying as the humans approached. Dr. Vexilor, his facial ridges flushed a deep indigo, retorted, "Unfounded? We know nothing of their biology, their potential to carry diseases harmful to our people. It is not merely prudent but necessary to isolate them until we can be certain they pose no threat." Captain Steele cleared his throat, drawing the attention of the assembled Denobulans. "If I may, esteemed council members, I believe we can address your concerns." A murmur rippled through the chamber as the Denobulans took in the human delegation. David noticed a mix of reactions: curiosity, fear, and in some cases, what appeared to be religious awe. The head of the council, an elderly Denobulan with elaborately patterned ridges, gestured for Steele to continue. "We welcome your input, Captain. Please, present your case." As Steele began a diplomatic address, David locked eyes with Solaris. She offered a small nod, her compound eyes reflecting a mixture of relief and concern. He wanted to move closer, to stand beside her in solidarity, but protocol demanded he remain with his team. Instead, David stepped forward when Steele finished, driven by an impulse he couldn't quite name. "Honorable Council," he began, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "I am Dr. David Shaw, lead xenobiologist of the human expedition. I understand your concerns regarding potential biological hazards, and I assure you, we share them." He launched into a detailed explanation of human biology, drawing on his extensive knowledge to highlight both the similarities and differences between their species. As he spoke, he noticed Dr. Vexilor's expression, shifting from outright hostility to grudging interest. "While it's true that our species have evolved in different environments," David concluded, "the fundamental building blocks of life are remarkably similar across the galaxy. With proper precautions and joint research, I believe we can ensure safe interactions between our peoples." Solaris stepped forward, her facial ridges pulsing with what David now recognized as excitement. "I concur with Dr. Shaw's assessment. In fact, I propose we establish a joint research team to study our biological compatibility in depth." The council members conferred in hushed tones, their facial ridges flickering rapidly. Finally, the head of the council spoke. "We appreciate the insights provided by both Dr. Shaw and Dr. Solaris. After careful consideration, we propose a compromise." The terms were quickly laid out: limited access to Denobulan Society for the humans, daily medical examinations, and restricted movement within designated areas. The joint research team would be formed immediately, with David and Solaris as co-leaders. As the meeting adjourned, a commotion outside the chambers drew everyone's attention. Through the crystalline walls, they could see a growing crowd of Denobulans, some holding signs with alien script, others chanting in their native tongue. "Protesters," Martinez muttered, his hand moving to his weapon. Solaris stepped forward, her posture radiating calm authority. "Allow me," she said to the council members. As the doors opened, she addressed the crowd, her voice amplified by unseen technology. "Fellow Denobulans," she began, "I understand your concerns and your curiosity. The arrival of the humans marks a new chapter in our history, but let us approach this moment with open minds and peaceful hearts." As Solaris continued her impromptu speech, David scanned the crowd. His eyes fell on a hooded figure moving against the flow of the crowd, approaching the human delegation with purposeful strides. "Martinez," David whispered urgently. 3 o'clock, hooded figure." Before Martinez could react, the figure's arm whipped forward, releasing a small object. David's body moved before his mind could process the action. He launched himself at Captain Steele, tackling him to the ground as a blinding flash erupted above them. The world became a cacophony of sound and disorienting light. David felt hands grasping him, pulling him away from the chaos. As his vision cleared, he found himself staring into Solaris's compound eyes, her blue skin seeming to shimmer with concern. "Are you all right?" she asked, her translated voice barely audible above the din. David nodded, his ears still ringing. Around them, Denobulan security forces swarmed the area, apprehending several suspects. Captain Steele was already on his feet, coordinating with Martinez to secure the rest of the human delegation. As Solaris led him to safety, David realized that the road ahead would be far more complex than any of them had anticipated. The incident had shattered the illusion of easy coexistence, revealing the deep-seated fears and prejudices that lurked beneath the surface of both societies. Yet as he looked at Solaris, he felt a glimmer of hope. In her eyes, he saw not an alien, but a kindred spirit, someone who shared his thirst for knowledge and understanding. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew that this connection, this bridge between their two worlds, would be crucial in navigating the uncertain future that stretched before them. In the aftermath of the attack, David found himself thrust into a whirlwind of activity. The incident had shattered the fragile peace between humans and Denobulans, leaving both sides on edge. As he walked through the corridors of the SS Horizon, he could feel the tension crackling in the air like static electricity. The makeshift laboratory had become a sanctuary for David and Solaris. They spent countless hours hunched over microscopes and holographic displays, their hands occasionally brushing as they reached for the same instrument. Each time it happened, David felt a jolt of electricity that had nothing to do with the ship's systems. "Look at this," Solaris said, her compound eyes reflecting the glow of the holographic display. "The protein structures in human and Denobulan blood cells are remarkably similar." David leaned in, his shoulder pressing against hers. Fascinating. It's almost as if our species evolved from a common ancestor, despite developing on different worlds. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the rest of the universe seemed to fade away. The moment was broken by the sharp buzz of the intercom. "Dr. Shaw, report to the bridge immediately." Captain Steele's voice crackled through the speaker. David arrived on the bridge to find Steele pacing, his face etched with worry. "We've just received word from Earth. Ambassador Marcus Thorne and his diplomatic team will be here within 24 hours. "So soon?" David's brow furrowed. "I thought we had more time to prepare." Steele shook his head. "The situation has become too volatile. Earth wants to establish formal relations before things spiral out of control." As they discussed the preparations for the diplomatic team's arrival, the ship's communication officer interrupted. "Captain, you need to see this." On the main view screen, a Denobulan news broadcast flickered to life. Dr. Vexilor's face filled the screen, his facial ridges pulsing with an angry red glow. "Asu, these aliens pose an imminent threat to our way of life," Vexilor was saying. "Their biology is incompatible with ours. They carry diseases that could devastate our population. We must act now to protect Denobula Prime." David watched in horror as the broadcast cut to scenes of protests in Gentar. Denobulans marched through the streets, carrying signs with xenophobic slogans. Some footage showed human crew members being jostled and harassed as they tried to navigate the city. "This is bad," David muttered. He turned to Steele. "Captain, we need to do something to counter this propaganda. If we don't act quickly, the situation could become irreparable." Steele nodded grimly. "What do you suggest, Doctor?" David took a deep breath. "A public demonstration. We need to show the Denobulans that we're not a threat. Solaris and I have made significant progress in our research. If we can present our findings in a way that the general public can understand, we might be able to sway public opinion." Steele considered for a moment, then nodded. "Make it happen, Doctor. But be careful. We can't afford any mistakes." David spent the next several hours with Solaris, preparing for their demonstration. They worked side by side, their fingers flying over holographic keyboards as they compiled their research into a presentable format. "David," Solaris said softly as they worked, "I want you to know that not all Denobulans share Vexilor's views. Many of us are excited about the possibilities your arrival brings." David looked up, meeting her gaze. "I know, Solaris, and I'm grateful for allies like you." The following day, David and Solaris set up their equipment in Gentar's central plaza. A crowd had gathered, a mix of curious onlookers and angry protesters. David could feel the weight of their stares as he adjusted the final settings on their holographic projector. "Ready?" he asked Solaris. She nodded, her facial ridges pulsing with a soft blue glow that David had come to associate with persistence. As they began their presentation, David felt a surge of hope. The crowd seemed to be listening, their hostile murmurs giving way to interested silence as he and Solaris explained the similarities between human and Denobulan biology. But halfway through their demonstration, a commotion at the edge of the crowd caught David's attention. Dr. Vexilor had arrived, flanked by a group of supporters. "You claim to be harmless," Vexilor called out, his voice carrying across the plaza. "But how can we trust you? How do we know your very touch won't poison us?" David felt a moment of panic, but then an idea struck him. Without thinking through the consequences, he reached out and took Solaris's hand. The crowd gasped as he placed her blue-skinned palm against his bare chest, directly over his heart. "Feel that?" he said, his voice amplified by the plaza's acoustic system. "That's a human heartbeat. Not so different from your own, is it?" Solaris's eyes widened, her facial ridges suddenly glowing with an intense pulsating light. The crowd fell silent, watching in awe as Solaris's bioluminescence response revealed the depth of her emotional reaction. Seizing the moment, Solaris turned to address the crowd. "My fellow Denobulans," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "I have worked closely with the humans since their arrival. I can assure you, they are not a threat. They are explorers, scientists, seekers of knowledge, just like us. The potential benefits of cooperation between our species are immeasurable." As Solaris spoke, David noticed a shift in the crowd's mood. Faces that had been hostile now looked thoughtful, even hopeful. Even some of Vexilor's supporters seemed swayed by the display. Just as the demonstration was concluding, David's communicator buzzed. It was Captain Steele. "Doctor, we have a situation. Ambassador Thorne's ship has arrived ahead of schedule, but they're reporting technical difficulties. We need you back at the spaceport immediately." David exchanged a quick glance with Solaris. They had made progress today, but he knew the real challenges were just beginning. As they hurried towards the spaceport, neither of them noticed the hooded figure slipping away from the crowd, heading towards a hidden entrance beneath the city. In a secret laboratory deep below Gentar, Dr. Vexilor removed his disguise and turned to a group of waiting scientists. "Begin the next phase," he ordered, his eyes gleaming with fanatical tenacity. "It's time to show these humans what happens when they try to corrupt our world." The scientists nodded, turning to a row of containment units filled with a swirling, greenish substance. As Vexilor watched, a smile spread across his face. Soon, he thought, Denobula Prime would be free of the human infestation, one way or another. The greenish substance swirled ominously in the containment units as Vexilor's sinister plans began to unfold. Meanwhile, across the city, David and Solaris rushed towards the spaceport, unaware of the danger brewing beneath their feet. As they approached the bustling terminal, David's communicator crackled to life. Captain Steele's voice came through, tense and urgent. "Shaw, we've got a situation. Ambassador Thorne's ship is experiencing severe malfunctions. They're losing altitude fast." David exchanged a worried glance with Solaris as they quickened their pace. "We're almost at the control center, Captain. What's their status?" "Critical," Steele replied. "They're going to attempt an emergency landing outside the city limits. We need all hands on deck for this one." The spaceport's control center was a hive of activity when David and Solaris arrived. Denobulan officials huddled around holographic displays, their facial ridges pulsing with stress-induced bioluminescence. Captain Steele stood at the center of the chaos, barking orders and coordinating with the failing ship. "Shaw, thank God you're here," Steele said, gesturing them over. "We need to assemble a rescue team immediately. That ship's going down in the crystal forests, and we have no idea what condition the ambassador and his team will be in." David nodded, his mind already racing through possible scenarios. "I'll lead the team, Captain. We'll need medical personnel and security." "I'm coming too," Solaris interjected, her compound eyes gleaming with commitment. "My knowledge of Denobulan terrain could prove invaluable." Steele hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Agreed. Take Martinez and Dr. Rogers with you. And for God's sake, be careful out there." Within minutes, the rescue team was assembled and boarding a sleek Denobulan hover transport. As they sped towards the crash site, David briefed the team on what little information they had. The ambassador's ship had experienced a catastrophic systems failure, forcing it to attempt a landing in the notoriously treacherous crystal forests outside Gentar. The hover transport hummed as it navigated the outskirts of the city, the towering crystal formations looming ever closer. Solaris leaned in close to David, her voice low. "The crystal forest can be dangerous. The formations are known to shift unpredictably, and some of the local flora is highly toxic to most species." David nodded, grateful for her insight. "Any advice on how to navigate safely?" "Stay close and don't touch anything without checking with me first," Solaris replied, her facial ridges pulsing with a soft blue glow that David had come to associate with focused concentration. As they approached the crash site, the extent of the damage became clear. The ambassador's ship had carved a deep furrow through the crystal forest, its hull partially buried beneath shimmering debris. Smoke billowed from several breaches, and the eerie quiet was punctuated only by the occasional groan of stressed metal. The rescue team sprang into action the moment their transport touched down. Dr. Rogers led the charge towards the ship's emergency hatches, medical kit in hand. Martinez coordinated with the Denobulan security officers, establishing a perimeter around the crash site. David and Solaris worked in tandem, their movements synchronized as if they'd been partners for years. They helped extract the injured passengers and crew, guiding them to a makeshift triage area where Dr. Rogers could assess their conditions. As David helped a limping diplomat from the wreckage, something caught his eye. Strange markings marred the ship's hull, incongruous with the damage caused by the crash. He motioned to Martinez, keeping his voice low. "John, take a look at this. These marks, they don't look like impact damage." Martinez's eyes narrowed as he examined the hull. "You're right, this looks like sabotage." Before they could discuss further, Solaris called out from nearby. "Dr. Rogers, over here. I've found some Xanathian moss. It has potent analgesic properties that might help with the pain management." As Dr. Rogers hurried over to examine Solaris's find, David noticed a man observing their interactions with keen interest. He recognized him as Michael Reeves, the cultural liaison officer mentioned in the mission briefing. Reeves approached David, his eyes darting between him and Solaris. "Dr. Shaw, I presume? I must say, your working relationship with Dr. Solaris is quite remarkable. In all my years studying interspecies relations, I've rarely seen such seamless cooperation between two different species." Before David could respond, a deafening explosion rocked the crash site. Shards of crystal rained down as a group of armed denobulans emerged from the forest, their weapons trained on the rescue team. "Humans!" a familiar voice rang out. Dr. Vexilor stepped forward, his facial ridges glowing an angry red. "Your presence on our world ends now. Surrender and leave Denobula Prime immediately, or face the consequences." David's mind raced as he assessed their options. They were outnumbered and outgunned, with injured civilians to protect. He caught Solaris's eye, and in that moment, a plan began to form. As energy blasts scorched the air around them, David and Solaris dove behind a fallen crystal tree. The refractive properties of the crystal gave David an idea. He quickly explained his plan to Solaris, who grasped the concept immediately. While Martinez coordinated their defensive position, and Dr. Rogers worked frantically to stabilize the most critical patients, David and Solaris began adjusting nearby crystal shards. Their goal was to create a network of reflective surfaces that could potentially blind their attackers. Michael Reeves, huddled nearby with the other diplomats, watched their cooperation with growing fascination. Even in the heat of battle, the human scientist and denobulan doctor moved in perfect sync, their actions complementing each other flawlessly. Suddenly, a high-pitched whine filled the air. Solaris collapsed, her hands clutching her head in agony. David turned to see Vexilor holding a device emitting a painful sonic frequency targeted at denobulan physiology. Without hesitation, David grabbed Solaris and pulled her to safety, shielding her with his body. As he held her, Solaris's facial ridges began to pulse with an intense, mesmerizing light. The bioluminescent display caught Vexilor off guard, momentarily distracting him. Seizing the opportunity, Martinez shouted, "Now!" David activated their improvised crystal array. Amplified beams of light shot out in all directions, temporarily blinding Vexilor and his followers. In the confusion, Martinez led a counterattack, disarming several of the extremists. As the tide of the battle turned, the distant hum of approaching vehicles signaled the arrival of reinforcements. Vexilor, realizing his plan had failed, retreated into the crystal forest with his remaining loyalists, disappearing before they could be apprehended. In the aftermath of the attack, as the injured were evacuated and evidence collected, David found himself standing next to Solaris at the edge of the crash site. The adrenaline of the battle was wearing off, leaving behind a profound sense of connection between them. "Thank you," Solaris said softly, her compound eyes meeting David's gaze, "for saving me back there." David smiled, feeling the weight of everything they'd been through together. "We saved each other. I couldn't have done any of this without you." As they boarded the transport back to Gentar, David and Solaris sat close together, their hands discreetly intertwined. Neither noticed Michael Reeves watching them intently, his mind already formulating a proposal that could change the course of human-denobulan relations. The crystal forest glittered in the fading light as the transport lifted off, carrying with it the seeds of a partnership that would shape the future of both their species. But as they flew towards the city, none of them were aware of the danger still lurking beneath Gentar's streets, where Vexilor's true plan was only just beginning to unfold. The transport glided smoothly into the docking bay of the SS Horizon, its engines powering down with a soft hum. As David and Solaris disembarked, they were immediately met by Captain Steele's stern gaze. "Shaw, Dr. Solaris, we need you in the conference room immediately," Steele said, his voice tight with urgency. "The situation has escalated." They followed the captain through the ship's corridors, the tension palpable in the air. As they entered the conference room, David took in the assembled group. Ambassador Thorne, looking haggard but determined. Michael Reeves, the cultural liaison officer, his eyes darting between David and Solaris with keen interest, and several high-ranking Denobulan officials, their facial ridges pulsing with varying hues of concern and agitation. Captain Steele wasted no time. "We're facing a crisis, people. The attack at the crash site was just the beginning. We need a strategy to counter Dr. Vexilor's extremist movement and foster unity between our species." Ambassador Thorne nodded gravely. "We can't let fear and mistrust derail everything we've worked for. We need a symbol of hope, something to show that humans and Denobulans can coexist peacefully." Michael Reeves cleared his throat, stepping forward. "I believe I have a solution," he said, his gaze falling on David and Solaris. "We've all seen the remarkable partnership between Dr. Shaw and Dr. Solaris. Their ability to work together seamlessly, despite their differences, could be the key to changing hearts and minds." David felt a mix of surprise and unease as Reeves continued, outlining a plan to use their relationship as a public example of human Denobulan compatibility. He proposed a series of public appearances and joint scientific presentations, showcasing their collaborative work and personal connection. Solaris's compound eyes widened, her facial ridges flashing a complex pattern of colors that David had come to recognize as a mix of excitement and apprehension. He felt a similar conflict within himself, understanding the potential impact of such a strategy while also feeling the weight of responsibility it would place on their shoulders. The Denobulan High Counselor, Genera, spoke up, her voice carrying the harmonics unique to her species. "While I see the merit in this plan, we must also consider the risks. Dr. Vexilor and his followers will undoubtedly view this as a provocation." Captain Steele nodded, turning to his security chief. "Martinez, I want you to form a specialized protection detail for Dr. Shaw and Dr. Solaris. We can't take any chances with their safety." As the meeting continued, David found his mind wandering, grappling with the implications of their new roles. He glanced at Solaris, who met his gaze with a look of shared understanding. They had become more than colleagues, more than friends, but the nature of their connection was still undefined, complicated by the vast differences between their species. The days that followed were a whirlwind of preparation. David and Solaris spent hours in the lab, refining their research on human Denobulan biological compatibility. They worked tirelessly, their movements in sync, finishing each other's sentences as they developed experiments to showcase the potential for harmonious coexistence. During a rare moment of quiet, David broached the subject that had been weighing on his mind. "Solaris, I need to ask you something about Denobulan relationships." Solaris tilted her head, her facial ridges pulsing with a soft, encouraging glow. "Of course, David. What would you like to know?" David took a deep breath. "I've been reading about Denobulan mating customs, and I learned that they involve complex polyamorous arrangements. I guess I'm just trying to understand, what does our relationship mean in that context?" Solaris's compound eyes seemed to soften as she considered her response. "David, it's true that Denobulans typically form intricate relationship networks, but what we have, it's unique. It doesn't have to fit into any predefined category, human or Denobulan." Before David could respond, the lab door slid open and Security Officer Martinez entered. "It's time," he said, his voice professional but tinged with concern. "The event is about to begin." The central plaza of Gentar was packed with a mix of humans and Denobulans, the air thick with anticipation and an undercurrent of tension. As David and Solaris took the stage, David felt a surge of adrenaline. This was more than a scientific presentation. It was a statement about the future of their species. They began their demonstration, showcasing experiments that highlighted the compatible aspects of human and Denobulan biology. David explained the results while Solaris manipulated the holographic displays, their teamwork evident in every seamless transition. The crowd's reaction was mixed. Some leaned forward, clearly fascinated by the implications of their research. Others muttered skeptically, their body language closed off and defensive. As they reached the climax of their presentation, a disturbance rippled through the crowd. Suddenly, the air was filled with buzzing hover drones, projecting grotesque, exaggerated images of human anatomy. Panic spread quickly as denobulans recoiled from the shocking visuals. "David!" Solaris cried out, grabbing his arm as security forces rushed to evacuate them from the stage. In the chaos, David caught a glimpse of a familiar face. Dr. Vexilor, standing at the edge of the plaza, a satisfied smirk on his face as he watched his plan unfold. As they were whisked away to a secure location, David's mind raced. The attack had been well coordinated, designed to stoke fear and revulsion. He realized that the battle for acceptance would be harder than any of them had anticipated. Locked away in a safe house within the Denobulan government complex, David and Solaris found themselves alone, the weight of the day's events pressing down on them. The silence stretched between them, filled with unspoken questions and fears. Finally, Solaris spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "David, I'm sorry. I should have anticipated something like this. My people's fears run deeper than I realized." David moved closer, taking her hand in his. The touch sent a shiver through him, a reminder of the connection they shared, despite the barriers between their species. "We're in this together, Solaris. Whatever happens, whatever we face it as one." As they looked into each other's eyes, the boundaries between human and Denobulan seemed to fade away. In that moment, they were simply two beings drawn together by something greater than themselves. Unbeknownst to them, aboard the SS Horizon, a different kind of drama was unfolding. Security Officer Martinez and his team raced through the ship's corridors, in hot pursuit of an intruder who had breached the medical bay. The chase led them to the cargo bay, where they cornered a Denobulan engineer named Zarak, clutching a data device and vials of human tissue samples. Ambassador Thorne arrived on the scene, his diplomatic instincts kicking in as he assessed the tense standoff. "Let's all stay calm," he said, addressing Zarak directly. "Whatever your reasons, we can work this out peacefully. There's no need for further conflict." As the ambassador began his delicate negotiation, the future of human-Denobulan relations hung in the balance. The events of the day had exposed the deep-seated fears and mistrust between the two species, but they had also revealed the potential for understanding and connection. In his hidden laboratory beneath Gentar, Dr. Vexilor received the stolen data and samples from his operatives. A triumphant smile spread across his face as he turned to the containment units holding the swirling, greenish substance. "At last," he murmured, his eyes gleaming with fanatical intensity. "We have everything we need to protect our world from the human infestation." As he began the final phase of his plan, the fate of both species teetered on a knife's edge. The bond between David and Solaris would be tested in ways they could never have imagined, becoming the crucible in which the future of human-Denobulan relations would be forged. The chaos that erupted in the wake of the failed public event sent shockwaves through Gentar. As David and Solaris were whisked away to safety, the city descended into a maelstrom of fear and uncertainty. The Denobulan High Council, faced with mounting pressure from both sides of the human-Denobulan divide, convened an emergency session. Within hours, the council made a decision that would alter the course of events on Denobula Prime. Councilor Genera, her facial ridges pulsing with a mix of concern and willpower, addressed the public via holographic broadcast. "Citizens of Denobula, in light of recent events and to ensure the safety of all, we are implementing a temporary lockdown of all major cities, effective immediately. This measure is not taken lightly, but it is necessary to prevent further unrest and protect both human and Denobulan lives." As the announcement echoed through the streets, David found himself being escorted back to the SS Horizon. He cast a desperate glance at Solaris, who was being led in the opposite direction by a group of Denobulan security officers. "Solaris!" he called out, straining against the firm grip of his own security detail. "Where are they taking you?" Solaris turned, her compound eyes reflecting the confusion and fear that David felt. I don't know, David. But we'll find each other again. We have to. Their voices were drowned out by the commotion as they were separated, the distance between them growing with each passing second. David watched helplessly as Solaris disappeared into a government transport, his heart heavy with the realization that their newfound connection was being tested in ways he couldn't have imagined. Aboard the SS Horizon, Captain Steele paced the bridge, his face etched with perseverance. "We can't sit idly by while the situation deteriorates," he declared to his assembled officers. "It's time we take action to root out the source of this conflict." Security Officer John Martinez stepped forward, his posture rigid with purpose. "Captain, I have a proposal. We have the technology to conduct covert scans of the city's underground levels. If Dr. Vexilor is operating a hidden lab, we might be able to detect its energy signature." Steele nodded, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "Make it happen, Martinez. Assemble a team of our best people and coordinate with any Denobulan allies we can trust. We need to find that lab before Vexilor can do any more damage." As Martinez set his plan into motion, David found himself confined to his quarters on the horizon. The forced inaction gnawed at him, his mind racing with concerns for Solaris and the future of human-Denobulan relations. He pored over his research notes, searching for any clue that might help unravel the complex situation they found themselves in. Meanwhile, deep beneath the streets of Gentar, Dr. Vexilor worked feverishly in his hidden laboratory. The stolen data and samples from the SS Horizon had provided the final pieces of the puzzle he needed. Surrounded by glowing containment units filled with a swirling, greenish substance, he manipulated complex holographic interfaces, fine-tuning his anti-human biological agent. "At last," he murmured, his eyes gleaming with fanatical intensity, "we have everything we need to protect our world from the human infestation." But as he initiated the final synthesis process, alarms began to blare throughout the lab. Vexilor's eyes widened in horror as he realized a containment breach had occurred. A small amount of the unfinished agent had been released into the air. "Seal the lab," he shouted to his followers, who scrambled to activate emergency protocols. "No one leaves until we understand the extent of the exposure." Hours passed, and the first signs of the agent's effects began to manifest in the exposed Denobulans. Their facial ridges pulsed with an uncontrollable, vivid bioluminescence, and their emotional states became erratic and intensified. Vexilor observed the affected individuals with a mix of scientific fascination and growing dread. "Quarantine them," he ordered, his voice tight with almost unchecked panic. "We must refine the agent before it's too late." As the lockdown entered its third day, reports of similar unusual behavior began to surface throughout Gentar. Ambassador Thorne, working tirelessly from a hastily established joint human Denobulan command center, received the troubling news. "We're getting multiple reports of Denobulans exhibiting strange symptoms," reported Cultural Liaison Officer Michael Reeves, his brow furrowed with concern. "Uncontrollable bioluminescence, extreme emotional states. It's spreading, and we don't know why." Thorne's diplomatic instincts kicked into high gear. "We need to pool our resources on this. Get me in touch with the Denobulan Health Ministry, and I want our best scientists on it immediately." On the SS Horizon, David caught wind of the developing situation. He requested an urgent meeting with Captain Steele, his mind racing with possibilities. "Captain, I've been studying the reports," David explained, barely containing his excitement and concern. "The symptoms, they're eerily similar to some of the physiological responses I observed in Solaris during our closer interactions. I think there might be a connection between human Denobulan physical contact and these changes." Steele listened intently, his expression grave. "Are you suggesting that Vexilor's weapon might be backfiring, affecting Denobulans instead of humans?" David nodded. "It's possible, but I need to examine the affected individuals to be sure. Captain, I know it's asking a lot, but I need to get out there. My expertise could be crucial in understanding what's happening." After a moment of consideration, Steele reluctantly agreed. "All right, Dr. Shaw, but you'll have a security detail with you at all times. We can't risk losing you to whatever's out there." As David prepared to venture into the lockdown city, John Martinez's search team made a breakthrough. Deep beneath Gentar's central district, their scanners detected a significant energy anomaly. "Captain," Martinez reported, his voice crackling with static over the comm channel. "We've got something. A massive power signature. Unlike anything else in the city, it's got to be Vexilor's lab." Steele's voice was firm with tenacity. "Good work, Martinez. Hold your position. We'll coordinate with the Denobulan authorities for a full-scale raid. This might be our chance to end this crisis once and for all." In a secure government facility across the city, Solaris received word of David's fieldwork through her contacts. Her compound eyes widened with a mix of pride and concern. Using all her powers of persuasion, she convinced her guards to allow her to join the research efforts. As she prepared to leave, her personal communication device chirped with an incoming message. The sender was unknown, but the content sent a chill through her body. "The truth lies beneath the surface. Vexilor's intentions go deeper than you know. Meet me at the old Crystal Gardens if you want to save both our species." Solaris hesitated, her mind racing with the implications of the message and the risks involved. But as she thought of David out there, potentially in danger, she knew she had to act. With a deep breath, she stepped out of her secure room and into the uncertain future that awaited them all. The city of Gentar, locked down and simmering with tension, stood on the brink of a confrontation that would determine the fate of two species. As David, Solaris, Martinez's team, and Dr. Vexilor all moved towards their inevitable collision, the true nature of the biological agent and its effects remained shrouded in mystery. The next few hours would test the limits of human Denobulan cooperation and push the boundaries of their understanding of each other's biology and culture. The underground laboratory thrummed with energy as Dr. Vexilor initiated the final synthesis process. Alarms blared, and chaos erupted as the containment breach spread through the facility. Above ground, the effects of the agent began to manifest in unexpected ways. Captain Steele's voice crackled over the comm system. "All personnel, prepare for immediate deployment. We've located Vexilor's lab." David's head snapped up from his research notes. This was the moment he'd been waiting for. He rushed to the bridge, his heart racing with anticipation and concern for Solaris. "Captain, I need to be part of this operation," David insisted, his eyes blazing with intensity. "My expertise could be crucial in understanding what's happening down there." Steele studied him for a moment before nodding. "Granted, Dr. Shaw, but you'll be under strict protection. We can't afford to lose you." As the strike team assembled, a familiar face appeared in the hangar bay. Solaris strode towards them, her compound eyes reflecting drive. "I'm coming with you," she announced, her voice brooking no argument. "I have information that could be vital to this mission." David's heart leapt at the sight of her. "Solaris, how did you—" She cut him off with a quick gesture. "There's no time to explain. We need to move now." The joint human Denobulan strike force moved through the city with practiced efficiency. They encountered pockets of affected Denobulans, their facial ridges pulsing with an eerie bioluminescence. The team worked quickly to subdue them without causing harm, their non-lethal tactics slowing their progress but preserving lives. As they descended into the depths of Gentar, the air grew thick with tension. Advanced breaching technology tore through the lab's outer defenses, and the team pushed forward into the heart of Vexilor's operation. Inside the lab, alarms blared as Vexilor received word of the invasion. His eyes widened with panic as he realized his plans were unraveling. "Initiate emergency protocol Omega," he shouted to his followers. "Release the agent into the water supply. It's our only chance to drive these humans from our world." The strike team fought their way through waves of security measures and loyal followers. David and Solaris worked in tandem, their movements synchronized as if they'd been partners for years. They covered each other's blind spots, communicated with subtle gestures, and pressed forward relentlessly. As they neared the central laboratory, they encountered a group of infected Denobulans. To everyone's surprise, these individuals hesitated, their eyes darting between Vexilor's loyalists and the strike team. "Something's wrong," one of them muttered, his voice thick with confusion. I don't want to fight the humans anymore." David's eyes widened as he observed their behavior. "The agent," he breathed, "it's not working the way Vexilor intended." The team seized this moment of confusion to push through to the central lab. They burst in to find Vexilor frantically working at a control panel, his followers in disarray around him. "It's over, Vexilor!" Captain Steele's voice boomed through the chamber. "Surrender now!" Vexilor spun to face them, his eyes wild with desperation. "You don't understand. I'm trying to save our people." As energy weapons discharged and improvised weapons clashed, David and Solaris made their way to Vexilor's research terminal. They worked furiously to access the data, their fingers flying over the alien interface. "David, look at this," Solaris gasped, pointing to a stream of data. "The agent, it's not harming humans at all. It's creating some kind of physiological bond between our species." David's mind raced as he processed the information. "That explains the changes we've been seeing. It's not a weapon, it's a bridge." As this realization dawned, the tide of the battle shifted. More of Vexilor's followers turned against him, their newfound empathy for humans overwhelming their previous loyalty. In the chaos, Vexilor was subdued, his grandiose plans crumbling around him. With the immediate threat neutralized, the full implications of the situation began to sink in. The agent had already begun to spread through Gentar's population, causing widespread physiological changes that were reshaping Denobulan society at its core. Captain Steele immediately contacted the Denobulan High Council and Ambassador Thorne, his voice grave as he relayed the situation. "We need to lift the lockdown immediately," he advised. "Set up quarantine zones to monitor the spread, but we need to get ahead of this before panic sets in." As the crisis management team shifted its focus, David and Solaris found themselves at the center of a whirlwind of activity. Their unique bond and first-hand experience with the agent made them invaluable to the research efforts. News of the raid and its consequences spread like wildfire through Gentar. The streets, once tense with fear and mistrust, now buzzed with a strange new energy. Denobulans affected by the agent began to view their human visitors in a new light, their enhanced emotional connections breaking down barriers that had seemed insurmountable just days before. Yet even as this new understanding blossomed, new challenges arose. Unaffected Denobulans watched the changes with growing unease, fear of losing their cultural identity competing with the undeniable benefits of the newfound symbiosis. Aboard the SS Horizon, now a hub of frenetic scientific activity, David and Solaris worked tirelessly to understand the full scope of the agent's effects. Their own bond, strengthened by shared ordeal and biological imperative, served as a beacon of hope for what this new future could hold. As they pored over data late into the night, Solaris placed her hand over David's. "We've opened a door here," she said softly, "one that can never be closed again." David nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. "Whatever comes next, we'll face it together. Not just you and me, but all of us, humans and Denobulans alike." Little did they know that even as they spoke, the seeds of a new challenge were being sown. In the shadows of Gentar, a charismatic Denobulan named Krelvor gathered followers, his voice rising in impassioned plea against the spreading symbiosis. "We cannot allow our very essence to be altered," he declared to the growing crowd. "We must find a way to reverse this invasion of our bodies and minds." As the night deepened, the city of Gentar pulsed with the conflicting energies of hope and fear, unity and division. The next phase of this interstellar crisis was just beginning, and at its heart stood David and Solaris, their entwined fates now inseparable from the future of both their species. The aftermath of the raid on Vexilor's lab sent shockwaves through Gentar. As dawn broke, the city streets buzzed with a strange new energy. Denobulans affected by the agent viewed their human visitors with newfound curiosity and warmth, while those untouched watched warily from the sidelines. David and Solaris found themselves at the epicenter of this societal shift. Their days blurred into a whirlwind of research, meetings, and public appearances. They worked tirelessly in makeshift labs, poring over data and running tests on willing volunteers. "Look at these neural scans," David said, gesturing to a holographic display. "The synaptic activity in affected Denobulans is off the charts when they're in proximity to humans." Solaris nodded, her compound eyes reflecting the flickering data. and the human subjects show similar patterns. It's as if the agent is creating a kind of biological resonance between our species. Their findings were as exciting as they were concerning. The agent wasn't just changing individual denobulins, it was reshaping the very fabric of their society. Cultural barriers that had seemed insurmountable just days ago were crumbling in the face of this newfound empathy. But not everyone welcomed these changes. As David and Solaris left their lab one evening, they encountered a group of unaffected denobulins gathered in the street. At the center stood Krelvor, his voice rising above the murmur of the crowd. "We cannot allow our very essence to be altered," he declared, his eyes blazing with fervor. "This agent is an invasion, a corruption of our true selves." David felt Solaris tense beside him. He placed a hand on her shoulder, feeling the familiar spark of their connection. "We should go," he whispered. As they turned away, Krelvor's words followed them. "We must find a way to reverse this invasion of our bodies and minds." The next morning, Captain Steele called an emergency meeting aboard the SS Horizon. David and Solaris joined the senior staff in the briefing room, their faces drawn from lack of sleep. "The situation on the ground is deteriorating," Steele began, his voice grave. "Krelvor's movement is gaining traction. We need to establish a more permanent presence here if we're going to manage this crisis." Ambassador Thorne nodded in agreement. "I've been in talks with the Denobulin High Council. They're open to the idea of a joint research facility." "Harmony Base," Steele said, bringing up a holographic render of a sleek modern complex. "A hub for scientific collaboration and cultural exchange." As the others discussed logistics, David felt a familiar warmth spread through him. He glanced at Solaris, seeing his own excitement mirrored in her eyes. This was more than just a research facility. It was a symbol of what their two species could achieve together. Construction on Harmony Base began immediately, transforming a section of Gentar's outskirts into a hive of activity. David and Solaris split their time between overseeing the project and continuing their research. Their breakthrough came on a quiet evening, as they pored over the latest batch of test results. David's eyes widened as he processed the data. "Solaris, look at this," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. She leaned in, her antenna twitching with interest. "The physiological changes, they're more profound than we thought." The agent wasn't just creating empathy, it was fundamentally altering both human and denobulin biology. Affected individuals showed increased cognitive abilities, enhanced physical resilience, and in some cases, entirely new sensory perceptions. As news of their findings spread, the debate over the agent's effects intensified. Krelvor's followers grew more vocal, staging protests outside the half-finished Harmony Base. David watched from a window as Security Officer John Martinez led a team to maintain order, their non-lethal weapons a stark reminder of the delicate balance they were trying to maintain. The arrival of Dr. Marcus Finch and his team of human scientists added fuel to the fire. Finch, a renowned xenobiologist, had come to conduct independent studies on the agent's effects. His presence lent legitimacy to the research, but also drew the ire of Krelvor's movement. One evening, as David and Solaris walked back to their quarters, they found themselves caught in the middle of a demonstration. Krelvor stood atop a makeshift platform, his voice carrying over the crowd. "Look at what these humans have brought to our world," he shouted, pointing accusingly at David and Solaris. "They claim to seek harmony, but they're rewriting our very DNA." The crowd surged forward, angry voices rising. David felt Solaris's hand slip into his, their fingers intertwining. In that moment, surrounded by chaos, he was struck by the strength of their bond. Whatever came next, they would face it together. As they pushed through the crowd, David caught sight of John Martinez, organizing his peacekeeping force. The security officer's face was grim as he issued orders, preparing for the worst. Back in their quarters, David and Solaris sat in silence, the weight of the day settling over them. Solaris spoke first, her voice soft. "David, what if Krelvor is right? What if we're changing too much, too fast?" David looked at her, really looked at her. He saw the being he'd come to care for deeply, the brilliant scientist and compassionate soul. But he also saw the changes the agent had wrought in both of them. Were their feelings real, or just a product of biology? Before he could respond, their communication device chirped. It was Dr. Finch requesting an urgent meeting. As they made their way to his lab, David couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the precipice of something monumental. The future of human-denobulin relations hung in the balance, and they were at the very heart of it. Little did they know that across the city, Krelvor was gathering his most radical supporters. As night fell over Gentar, they prepared for an assault that would shake the foundations of Harmony Base and test the limits of David and Solaris's bond. As David and Solaris approached Dr. Finch's lab, alarms blared through Harmony Base. Security personnel rushed past them, weapons at the ready. "What's happening?" David called out to a passing officer. "Krelvor's followers are attacking the base," the officer shouted back. "Get to safety." David and Solaris exchanged a glance, their hearts racing. They sprinted towards the nearest secure area, the very lab they had been heading to. As they burst through the doors, Dr. Finch looked up from his workstation, startled. "Lock it down!" David yelled. Finch didn't hesitate. He activated the lab's security protocols, and blast doors slammed shut behind them. The sounds of chaos outside became muffled, but the gravity of the situation hung heavy in the air. "We need to contact Captain Steele," Solaris said, her antennae twitching nervously. David nodded, moving to the communication console. His fingers flew over the interface, bypassing standard channels to establish a direct link to the SS Horizon. "Captain Steele, this is David. We're under attack. Krelvor's followers have breached Harmony Base." Steele's voice crackled through the speakers, tense but controlled. "Understood. We're mobilizing all available personnel. Hold your position and stay safe." As David relayed their situation, Solaris worked furiously at another console, her compound eyes darting between multiple screens. "David, we need to secure our research," she said urgently. "If Krelvor gets his hands on our data..." He joined her at the workstation, and together they began compressing and encrypting their findings. The lab's reinforced walls shuddered as explosions rocked the base. Outside, John Martinez led a group of security officers in defending the facility. The corridors echoed with the sound of energy weapons and the clash of improvised melee weapons. Martinez's voice cut through the chaos, directing his team with calm efficiency. "Hold the line at Junction 7. Hassan, take your squad and flank them from the east corridor." Back in the lab, David and Solaris finished securing their data. They initiated simultaneous transmissions to both the SS Horizon and the Denobulin High Council. "It's done," David said, a mix of relief and tension in his voice. "Even if they breach this lab, our research is safe." Solaris nodded, then froze, her eyes widening. "David, look at this," she said, pointing to a stream of data on her screen. He leaned in, his breath catching as he processed the information. Are you seeing what I'm seeing?" Solaris nodded, her voice hushed with awe. "The agent, it's not just creating empathy, it's allowing for a temporary melding of minds between bonded humans and denobulins." They stared at each other, the implications sinking in. The sounds of battle seemed to fade away as a new possibility presented itself. "Should we..." David began, his voice trailing off. Solaris took his hand, her grip firm. "Yes, we have to try." They closed their eyes, focusing on the connection they'd built over their time together. At first, nothing happened. Then slowly, David felt a presence in his mind, alien yet familiar, complex and beautiful. Solaris gasped as David's consciousness intertwined with hers. Memories flowed between them. David's childhood on Earth, Solaris's first day at the Denobulin Science Academy. They felt each other's hopes, fears, and most importantly, the depth of their feelings for one another. As their minds merged, a new understanding blossomed. They saw the conflict from both human and denobulin perspectives, grasping the fears and motivations driving both sides. Suddenly, David's eyes snapped open. "I have an idea," he said, his voice filled with newfound clarity. Solaris nodded, already understanding. They moved as one to the lab's main control panel, their hands working in perfect synchronization. "If we reconfigure the environmental systems," David began, "we can broadcast a modified version of the agent throughout the base. Solaris finished. They worked feverishly, reprogramming the lab's equipment. As they completed the final adjustments, they shared a look of persistence. "Ready?" David asked. Solaris took a deep breath. "Ready." They activated the system. A soft hum filled the air as the modified agent dispersed throughout Harmony Base. Outside, the fighting began to slow. Attackers and defenders alike paused, overwhelmed by a sudden influx of empathy and understanding. Weapons clattered to the ground as humans and denobulans alike grappled with the shared emotions flooding their minds. In the lab, David and Solaris monitored the effects through security feeds. They watched as the violence subsided, replaced by confusion and then gradually a tentative calm. "It's working," Solaris whispered, her voice filled with hope. David squeezed her hand. "Let's go. It's time to face them." They deactivated the lab's security protocols and stepped out into the corridor. The scene that greeted them was surreal. Humans and denobulans standing together, many embracing or engaged in intense conversation. As David and Solaris made their way through the crowd, all eyes turned to them. They could feel the weight of expectation, the need for answers. David cleared his throat, his voice carrying through the suddenly quiet hallway. "We have a lot to explain," he began, "about the true nature of the symbiotic bond and its potential to bring our people together." Solaris stepped forward, her voice blending seamlessly with David's. "What you're feeling now is just a glimpse of what's possible. We stand at the threshold of a new era of understanding between our species." As they spoke, sharing their experiences and the results of their research, the atmosphere in the base began to shift. The anger and fear that had driven the attack gave way to curiosity and cautious optimism. In orbit above Denobula Prime, a fleet of Earth ships dropped out of FTL. On the bridge of the flagship, Admiral Helena Graves watched the planet below, unaware of the profound changes unfolding on its surface. "Status report," she commanded, her voice crisp. "We're picking up unusual energy readings from the surface, Admiral," her science officer reported, centered around the human settlement. Graves nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Prepare a landing party. It's time we got a first-hand look at this situation." As the Admiral's shuttle began its descent towards Harmony Base, David and Solaris continued to address the assembled crowd. The future of human-denobulan relations hung in the balance, shaped by the choices they would make in the coming hours.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.